the recording. Yeah. So if you don't talk about your product, then hardly would people actually buy it, because people have to know the product before they buy. So the promotion bit of the financial services marketing is very, very important. We'll come to see the characteristics of we've come to see the characteristics of financial services and how it makes that characteristics actually make it difficult for you to promote, the product and services in the sector. And then, of course, we'll look at the consumer's behavior and how, the promotion actually, or the advertisers actually influence that behavior. Now, before we start, has anyone got a question from last lecture, last session, or a contribution to make before we start? All right. Now, I'm trying to also see what I can arrange for an external practitioner to come and speak to us, especially from the investment angle. Perhaps if we can have anyone, that could actually tell us the characteristics of those customers that actually invest and how the business is actually marketed to these, people. Perhaps that would be a good idea. So I'm trying to, get somebody to come and talk to us. When I'm able to make that arrangement, I will alert you guys. Okay. Okay. All right. So now, when you talk about the importance of, communication, or the importance of advertising, or better still, promotion in the financial services sector, I mean, we're looking at three core skills, three core things here. Obviously, it goes beyond that, but we can begin with these three things. One, that you have to actually create awareness for your brand, which is common for almost every, product or services. Two, you have to, as you're creating the awareness for the brand, you have to actually highlight the intangibility or the intangible product features or the service features. Now, bear in mind that when you talk about brand, you're dealing with both tangible and intangible aspects of the brand. Intangible ones, those ones that you cannot see, things like trust, all right? Obviously, the tangible ones, things that you can see, like the logo, like the strap line, like the color coding or the color schemes, all those things. But remember that the intangible ones actually derive from the tangible, because no one would say that they are an investment firm for them to be believed if they have a very deplorable, facilities. Like, you go to the office, it looks some kind of way. If you want to actually, look at what their, brand schemes are, colors are, and it's a little bit weird. I mean, some of these nitty-gritties would actually erode your confidence in that particular brand. So to generate, trust, or to generate an intangibility, aspect of the brand, you surely have to actually look at your tangible aspects, like staff, the way they dress, the way they speak, company, facilities, or logistics, the branding of the cars, etc. These things actually help to, generate the intangibles out of that. Then, of course, you're looking at how the communication is also used to facilitate differentiation, or to facilitate difference between your brand and the other, brands. Obviously, we can talk a lot more about, why advertising is important in financial services beyond these three. For example, the building of relationship, development and building of relationship is one that you can talk about, because you got to actually build relationship starting from, knowing it, and then, of course, getting to trust it, as one. You could also talk about, so many other, reasons why advertising or promotion is important, in the financial services, sector. Okay, So the difference between advertising financial product and other products are these. The reason why you probably want to even make sure that financial product are much more advertised than the other product is because obviously we say that the attributes for financial product are undefined, to many customers. Undefined because a lot of people actually see, financial product in bulk. For example, when you take a loan facility, I'm sure that those of you in the industry would or can tell so many attributes of loan facility and so many types of loan. But what customers mostly see is one kind of bundled, product. So it is crucial that you advertise so that people could actually see the various attributes of that particular product, and then be able to make a decision on it. Again, we talked about the quality of financial product may not be experienced. Last time when we did the pricing, we realized that the performance of a financial product is hugely dependent on the performance of the economy. Clearly, so if a company actually promises a certain benefit of a financial product to the consumer, be mindful that that benefit could only be realized mostly, dependent on the performance of the, the economy itself. So if, for example, in bond or in uh, uh, some of the, products that they sold, or even normal loans, where the interest rate is variable, you probably will go there. The interest rate is, let's say, 20.1 or let's say 12.5 or whatever. Now, because it's variable, depending on the performance of the economy, you may end up experiencing, an increase in your repayment because of the variability of the interest rate. So the interest rate, if it's very volatile, you're not going to get it at the rate when you secured it. So, and I remember at a time when the city was experiencing a very high volatility in comparison with the dollar. I remember that quite a number of people were complaining about their what they call multi choice decoder or something. I've forgotten I remember I heard the news, and a lot of people who were also having mortgage paid in dollars were also complaining because obviously the changes were actually affecting them badly. So the quality of financial product is hugely dependent on the quality of the economy. And so you've got to actually communicate, the product very well to people in order that they will be able to, differentiate, and they will be able to understand, some of these things. We say that image has been empirically established to dominate decision making in financial services. Why? Because it is like governance. Nobody can actually see what a good governance is. I mean, if political parties come to tell you that I will offer you good governance, which benchmark do you have to establish that, yes, indeed, they will offer you or they will provide you good governance? Because it's in the future, all right? The benefits of which is in the future. So you probably will use certain indicators like track record, like person's own ability or capabilities, the person's own character. So you will establish certain attributes, which sometimes is not even related to the product itself, in order to judge that indeed that good governance will actually be provided. Now, the same way as financial services, that's why in financial services, most of the sectors, banking, insurance, investment, you realize that good looking people who have unkempt hair like me, as always having bushy hair and things, are not tolerated. You realize that, I don't know whether they still do it, some firms actually offer clothing allowances for people to look good, because they are the measures for determining trust, determining quality, etc. So image is everything when it comes to service in particular, or when it comes to financial services in particular. So we've come to realize that image management is one of the fundamental attributes for determining quality product within the area. We also say that, because of the regulation, obviously, financial sector is one of the most regulated, areas, in the economy. And these things actually differentiate or separate financial products from other products and services. And so communication is so crucial so that people know the differences and can understand what measures they must use in choosing financial product, which is completely different from their daily experiences with other, products and services. I hope I'm clear here. Any questions or contributions? Any questions or contributions? We're looking at advertising in financial services or promotion in financial services, or broadly communication within the area. Okay, so challenges in financial services advertising, as we said, the product itself or the service is unexciting. I mean, if you cast your mind onto most of the products of financial services or services that is provided, majority of them are actually based on, people's need. Of course, that's general, but they are people's uncomfortable situations. That's where you need financial product. For example,
Yes.
you're broke. Yeah. Somebody wants to say something?
Yeah, I said it's true, sir.
Yeah. So, for example, when you're broke, that's when you need loan, isn't it? I mean,
Yes.
if you're not broke and you can afford, you would always use your own money. All right. Again, credit card is a matter of, people's, inability to perhaps, fund something by themselves. Obviously, funeral product when somebody is dead. So you see that insurance, for example, it's about you getting to some worse situation. So you see that when it comes to most of the financial product, is our other part of life. That is the unspeakable part of life, is when financial support or financial services actually come in, which is unpalatable in its sense, and it makes it unexciting. I don't think that anybody is so excited when they are going for loan, especially looking at the excruciating, effect that has on them. Now, when you think about going for mortgage and you look at how long you're going to pay for it, and possibly if touch wood, you exit, how much debt you're going to leave your children or your what do you call next of kin. There are things that usually it's unexciting, and one of the challenges is that. And so when you're actually thinking about how to package an advertising piece for a financial services, it's difficult to create excitement out of it because of the nature of it in itself. Of course, we've said the intangibility, difficult to picture or visualize it. So when people are actually telling you about the loan would actually help you, expand your business, I mean, your guess is as wild as mine. You cannot even picture it, the true effect of it, and whether it would even materialize, you know. And prices may vary from one consumer to the next, of course. And it's only within these spaces that you can find two people having different pricing tags. But of course, if you have to buy water, everybody buy water at one city. There's nothing like you buy it at two cities, unless of course people are actually opting for premium. But when it comes to financial services sectors, now you would have two people opting for the same product or services, but they may pay different premiums because of their risk profiles. So again, that's one of the challenges that we face. And I've talked about the market failures already. If a consumer come for, let's say, a loan, and you're expecting that repayment will be smooth for the next 6 months, little would you know that COVID would happen, and so they would end up defaulting to pay. So these are some of the challenges that we have, in the space that we have to be mindful of. when we actually, pitching our financial product and be able to speak to them. All right. Anyone with questions or contribution?
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm still thinking about the financial products being unexciting
Yeah,
and abstract.
yeah.
Where do we place this? I am in need of my own place.
Mm-hmm.
I see um, Ghana Home Loans
Yeah.
so a fantastic option for me.
Mm-hmm.
Bedroom at this price, spread over this, blah blah. And I look at it and I start envisioning how I am going to own my own place in a controlled
Mm-hmm.
manner.
Yeah.
I'm going to be able to pay at my own pace for this period of time.
Mm-hmm.
The financial cost and the stress is there, but I'm just trying to think about how something like that cannot be exciting, because I'm thinking banks or financial institutions try and, for want of a better word, sugarcoat products in such a way that it will create an emotive desire in people for them to come for it. So how do we reconcile the two?
Yeah, I agree. So the word unexciting is actually in comparison to the other purchases that you do, right? I mean, if you're actually going to buy, let's say, a television, and you have your own money, all right, in the first place, the TV is going to give you, I mean, there's a visual, isn't it? So physically, there's going to be entertainment. Perhaps you look forward to watching some of your selected, pieces of movies, etc. Now, the same cannot be said about financial products, where you know that the quality may not be realized. Are you with me? And quality in the sense that, as we said, you're going for a loan to apply it to your business for expansion. But the end result is hugely dependent on the economy. Now, by the time you secure the loan or the loan processes were completed, perhaps the interest rate or the APR is actually moving into unthinkable numbers. All right. I am sure by then you wouldn't be so enthused about the loan any longer. All right. Now, again, if you think about securing funeral products, I mean, that is when you probably have exited or your mother has exited, even at the point where the payment is being made, and maybe it was a funeral product for your mom, you're almost grieving, isn't it? So if you compare the acquisition of financial products with other products, whose result or end result is almost certain, because when you buy a TV, it's almost certain that you have an entertainment, all right? But when you go and get your mortgage, as you're talking about, you know that you are fantasizing about owning your own home, etc. But you could be saddled with a huge tax or a huge, what do you call, tag of repayment, isn't it? Isn't it the case?
Yes.
Yeah. So it doesn't actually make it. It doesn't actually make it so exciting as we buy, other product. Of course, momentarily, especially when maybe you have a huge burden. Let's say your child is going to school, and clearly you need some financial support, and this is a child you don't want to disappoint, or you don't want them to feel that education is not even important. At that material moment, any financial support extended by a bank or a financial institution will be so welcoming and will be so much of a relief to you. All right. But in that acquisition period, granted that there is a shift in the economic numbers, and then you end up being saddled with a very huge repayment, I'm sure that you would not be so happy. Are you with me, Gilbert?
Yes.
So
I get it.
yeah. So that's why we say that in comparison with other products and services, financial products and services are not really exciting, and so the likelihood of people rejecting some of your offers. So as we sell financial products, we have to actually bear in mind that we are competing with much more exciting offers, a much more exciting industry, all right, who are also competing for the customer's same money in their pocket. And so we have to be mindful of that limitation in our side of the sector and try and bring in a lot more things that could actually, bridge the gap or could actually reduce that unexciting character. So that's what we're trying to say. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Now, in terms of communicating the financial services or advertising it, again, we'll fall back on the consumer decision-making process and the various theories that are actually highlighted in them. Now, you realize that these 4 frameworks, I'm sure you guys have actually met them several times. Even in our own class, we've met these frameworks before. Now, in thinking about how do you package your communication, and remember we're looking at communicating the financial product, all right? How do you package the communication? How do you package the advertising? How do you, put together your promotion for financial product? You first of all have to think about these 4 frameworks. Any of them could help you to really put together a very good communication plan for your financial product, all right? One, you have to think about the consumer decision process, all right? The decision-making process, which we previously talked about, in the consumer decision-making, consumer behavior slide. Another framework that you can use is the communication process. Another one is the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And then, of course, you want to look at the execution style of the communication or of the ad. Now, without moving to the other slide, who can actually take the first one in a very way, describe how would the consumer decision process facilitate or support your design of a very effective communication plan for your financial product? Who can say that?
I'd like to attempt.
Okay, Michael, go on.
Okay, so I think one way that you can do that is to first zone in on the target market of the financial service that is up for advertising. Mm-hmm. After you zone in on the target market, you then do a bit of research into what their needs are,
Fantastic.
What their wants are, mm-hmm. and then also have to look at perhaps an estimate of the income that they make, and then other things like their behaviors and what they typically spend on first, what they typically need money for every month, mm-hmm. and also even go deeper and maybe even think about the time of the year that they may need money more than other times of the year. So, for example, some parents may need money towards the beginning of a new semester to pay for school fees, maybe towards the Christmas period. A lot of people tend to maybe they tend to look at all these things and then see how.
Michael, you've gone quite a little bit.
Create an advert.
Good, yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so you look at all these things, and then when you are, doing the plan for whatever advertisement it is, try and capture it visually, mm-hmm. that you understand what the needs
Michael,
are of the people.
Proceed to do that one for us as well, because you've highlighted that side. Proceed to create the ad. Let's see it.
Okay, so for example, let's just say that there's a new service that mm-hmm. is targeting perhaps parents, and it's supposed to help them maybe pre-finance school fees up until a certain point, maybe with a very small interest rate or some other reason. Mm-hmm. Now, what you would do first of all is perhaps conduct some research as to the current mm-hmm. Users of your bank. Excellent. Who fall under the category of a parent. Maybe you have some sort of database where you know if you have one child or two children, and maybe even some estimate of what year that the child is in. And then after that, you would probably realize that they usually withdraw maybe 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 in June,
Yeah.
maybe again in September, maybe
Yeah.
again in February, depending on which semester that the children is
Yeah.
go to school.
Mhm.
And then what you can do is when you then decide on the copy that you want to go with the advert, you make sure that it is in line with what they need. When you think of the visual, whether it's an image or a video, or maybe even an animation that you put on social media, you
Yeah.
have to make sure that it communicates that unique problem of needing money at this specific time for this specific purpose.
Excellent.
And then make sure that the advert is shown at least a few weeks, if not a few months, before the time that you realize that they usually withdraw for school fees,
Yeah.
just so that it is top of mind,
Yeah.
even before the time comes
Excellent.
that they need to make this withdrawal.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much, Michael. Guys, that's a very insightful, obviously drawing from his practical experience as an agency guy. So that's exactly what we're talking about. So usually when we talk about frameworks, as you may use it in corporate work as templates. So we're saying that for you to design a very effective advertising piece or communication piece on your financial product, take the consumer decision-making process, framework or the theory as you know it. Now, look at the stages of that theory, of that framework, and then mirror it to the practical, stage. So, for example, we're talking about target market. So, who is the target market and what would be their needs? Then you zero in on that. Are they people between the ages of 25 and 45? I mean, in terms of demographics, you're talking about perhaps the corporate kind of people or the middle income people. You have all these descriptions that you actually use. So this is how it goes, and as Michael has actually given us the practical feel. So you go through all these stages. You need recognition, information search, pre-purchase evaluation, purchase, consumption, post-purchase evaluation. So you know that, okay, so under need recognition, it means that there must be a target group, and within that target group, you must establish what their needs are. All right, so you put it down, and then you do your small research. And whenever we say research, it does not necessarily mean that you have to actually commission a research. Observation is one of those research. I mean, you work in the space, so you have observed over time, month January to March, the kind of people who come in and the kind of requests they make. So, top of your head, you can actually remember some of these things. Usually, we say that primary data is only required when there is a gap in data, to support your work. So, in most cases, your first, point of call for any research is your secondary data. Look into the books and see between month January and month March, what kind of people actually come to the financial services, company. What type of service do they require? How do they require it, etc. All right. So you identify all those. And then we say that once you have identified the target market and you have identified their needs, what kind of information do they usually need? How do they go about their information search? So you identified, okay, they need information about school fees, facilities, whether there's a loan, it's in a period, and then when those loans are actually given, how long they're supposed to be paid for, what is the usual, APR on it. So you identify all those information types, and then you provide answers to it. All right. So these are the the procedures we're saying that you are using to create a communication about. So once, as Michael said, once you have that copy, then you have to act it. So who is going to act? The customers, because you already have known the customer's characteristics, and then the decision point, must you use a man, a woman, or must you use a couple? All right. based on the information that you have already gathered. How do they come by information? So must you use word of mouth? Maybe, hey, Akosia, where did you get, how did you pay your child's school fees? Because we know that's for you. You always pay it late. There's a company, and there's a company that actually gives money. Then you know that word of mouth is, usually the referred point when people are looking for information search. Or maybe internet. So if it's internet, then you simulate a situation where somebody is by computer typing into Google which company actually gives student loan, which company actually gives loan for students, which company. Then you are replicating the real life experience in order that you can tell customers that this is how people go about securing this particular product and services. And so they must do the same. So that's what we're talking about. The framework to build the communication, one of which is information, the consumer decision-making process, which we have previously reiterated, and now we face it here as well. So that process you have to go through, and then, of course, let customers, use your agency to create or to recreate that process so that customers can mirror themselves, in the advertising or in the advertisement, in order that they replicate. Any addition or any question? And remember that, as Michael was explaining, he said something about whether it's internet, whether it's animation or whether it's, we should be mindful that when we're actually creating the copy, obviously the formats are not the same. TV is not the same as radio. Neither radio is the same as internet, all right? Even when it comes to radio, there are what we call LPMs, which is live presenter mentions, and there are what we call adverts, all right? When it comes to the press, there's what we call advertising, and there's what we call advertorials. So all these types are there. You have to actually identify which one you think will be effective for you. And to determine which one you think will be effective and efficient is dependent on the customer target, the target characteristics, all right? Recently, we're working for, my company is working for one of the, organizations in town. And we're supposed to create all these communication materials for them, right from, YouTube to TV. Now, we get to a stage where we've described all that has to be done. But then the recruitment or the decision whether we have to use, actors or we have to actually use in-house company people, or we basically have to just get somebody to actually do it. It's also a crucial decision. And the board has to sit on it and decide. I remember that we wanted to use internet images where we're buying the stock from Michael, can you remind me of this company? It's a Shutter or something. What's the name? They are like Shutterstock. Yeah, they are like Getty Images, but they are cheaper than Getty Images. So we bought the images from Shutterstock, but then the board, the CEO actually came to say that he doesn't want the the Shutterstock images, but he has his own camera. But he wants to actually take photos of one of their customers who is already agreed to help, and they've signed image rights, agreement to take photos. And when they brought the pictures, it was nice, it was very nice that we had to include. But then we had gone ahead to buy, those ones from Shutterstock that, probably we shouldn't actually bought it, but we assume that perhaps they would want it. So these are some of the decisions that you want to actually, look at in doing that. Of course, in your case, a majority of you, maybe apart from Michael, who has his own agency, in most of your case, you may not be doing this because of your role. But the key thing is that you must know them so that when agencies like Michael's own come and sit down and bamboozle you, you'll be able to ask the questions on behalf of your company. Because in most cases, agencies come with terminologies, and CEOs and other, technical guys on the team have no clue and they can't ask questions. Now, there will be a time where your CEO would ask you that, you say you've done, masters in marketing. Can you ask the questions? So it may not be part of your domain, but as a master's holder in marketing, you should be able to ask questions on the table or at the table when agencies come and do presentations and they show all this colorful stuff. Agencies, they like color. Michael, your guys, they like to, they like glitz, all right? And sometimes in that, consuming spirit of glitz and all that, they may lose certain details that you have to actually punch in, the technicalities or what people will call the substance. They may lose it. And the reason I'm saying that is that I actually, until recently, I was the chair for ABL's, what do you call, marketing and sales, quality standard, some kind of, standard checks. And majority of times, the agencies will bring the materials, and as a chair, I would actually, decline it. They will go mad because they've spent a lot of money for production. But I tell them, I'm sorry, we can't use this, because the coordination is not there. And whether it was there or not, sometimes to the in-house team, may not have that technicalities. The marketing team may not have that technicality to answer certain questions. So instead of them checking with me as the chair, they will go ahead and work with the agency, and they come and I said, no, because I'm looking at it from a critical perspective and I'm asking my questions. Okay, so how does the consumer really relate to this particular piece of message? So it's very crucial that you understand the processes and understand how they mirror in order that you can have a very effective campaign. Any questions? Any questions or contribution? So I take it that you understand this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. Now, along the line, I'll show you a video, then we can use it for analysis on these, things that we're talking about. And so let's look at the next. It says how advertising influences the consumer decision process. So similar to what Michael actually explained. So let's look at the stages. So you have these stages, that is what is on your left. Stage, need recognition, information search, pre-purchase evaluation, purchase, consumption, and post-purchase evaluation. Now let's look at how it's been acted or enacted in an advertising message. So the first one says, John is married with 2 kids, but has no life insurance. What does it tell you? From what we just explained, from the position of your identifying your target market and their needs, where target markets means that the characteristics of the people who usually buy that product. What does this first line tell you? John is married with 2 kids, but has no life insurance.
But has no life insurance.
Yeah?
It means when you are dealing with John, you getting to know that he has 2 kids. Mm-hmm. You have to try and convince him to get into education plan or something, a solution that will help him.
Excellent, good attempt. Next, who else would say something different? Okay, let me use the word. Why the name John but not Mary?
Mary.
Why the name John but not Mary?
But normally the husbands, they normally take the product.
Okay, good point. Who else wants to add?
Hello, Doc.
Yeah,
I think I can attempt.
Yeah.
So, okay, as the father figure, as the head of the family, it is expected that he safeguards the future of the children in his presence or absence.
Okay.
So, is in your absence, as we live in our culture, what are you leaving behind to make sure that the kids will be okay and taken good care of? And the answer will be the life insurance, because if you are to lose your life in the course of. The clauses are there to see what can be done for the kids for the foreseeable future. So I guess that the man's name is there.
Okay, good point. Who else, please? Michael, you wanted to say something?
I'm going to say that I think what it does is it begins to give us a fair idea of who the target is, the demographic, perhaps some sort of idea about how they think, what their priorities are, behaviors, and then also identifies, just like it says in the left side of the box, what their need is, which also will then influence what they begin to, where they begin to look for the solution for their need.
Okay, excellent. Any other ideas? Any other ideas on this sample ad message? Okay, so just like all of you have said, now two key terminologies here, or the two key things that you want to look at here. Obviously, the product is life insurance, but one, John as a representation of the target market. All right, and these are the demographics. John as a representation of the target market. Obviously, married, I think it's 3 rather, and then 2 kids. So you realize that perhaps from their books or from the research that they did, the target market shows that majority of times such purchases are done by the men, just like you guys have said. And majority of times, people are actually married, or you have that group of segment being couple, all right? If they had actually identified that there were quite a lot of single parent people, perhaps they wouldn't actually use married. They could say, John has 2 kids. Are you with me? But when they realize that the target market perhaps is dominant or dominated by couple or married people, then of course the word married is here. And then again, the number of children that segment or that target market reflects, and it shows that perhaps on the average, you can strike 2, because they could have said 3, they could have said 4. But when they look at the demographics of the target market, these could be the representation, all right? So it's mostly dominated by men who actually do that purchases. Majority of them are married, and on the average, they have 2 kids, all right? So, and of course, if you look at the name John, but not Ben, perhaps John is one common name that reflects what? The demographics, all right?
Yeah.
So they would use John as a representation of the target market, married with 2 kids as a representation of the target market. In order that it would look very relatable, all right? The message would look very relatable, and people can actually see themselves in that message. Otherwise, they could have used any other name, or they could have used a female instead of a name that is for male, if it were female dominant purchases. Are you with me?
Yeah.
And so that's why the identification of the target market, or the description of the target market and their needs, is crucial, so that the message would not be too abstractive. All right. Now, if it were, let's say, in Ghana, for example, all right, if this advert were actually, shown in Ghana, what do you think the name would be instead of John?
It will be Mensa.
Yes, and it will be Mr. Mensah is married with 2 kids. Why?
Because if he be a Mensa,
If you be a Mensa woman.
Yeah, exactly. And more so too, we hardly use our first names in official setting, isn't it? So it is most likely to be Mr. Mensah is married with 2 kids instead of Mensah is married with 2 kids. Are you with me? So it has to speak to the framework, or the frame of the society in order that the message is much more relatable. All right. So good practice. So it will be Mr. Mensah is married with 2 kids, etc. All right. Now let's look at the information search. We may not have the lowest rate for you, but we can tell who does. Information search. We may not have the lowest rate for you, but we can tell who does. What do you think this message is addressing in terms of information search? You probably are not used to this particular one, but let me try you. Yeah? Okay, so let me address that. Now, this symbolizes a web comparison site. All right? Okay. You know, there are websites that actually compare, you know, companies and their offering. Are you aware of those websites? So, so there's a company called Which, all right, which is a website actually, and they have a magazine. They tell people about which product is good, which product has which company has the lowest price. There's websites called GoCompare.com. So GoCompare.com is a website that actually compares prices of firms and tell you the cheapest one. Now, over time, perhaps they've seen that a lot of people use this particular website to what? To gather information, to compare prices, all right? So they are actually putting the information through that particular channel, all right? And so they actually know that, you know, there's a certain information search behavior of customers. And to be honest, most of the European and American, you know, consumers use price comparison websites for their decision making. And when you go into the airline, there's something like Opodo, you know, lastminute.com. I don't know whether you've heard these companies' names before, right? And TripAdvisor, for example, right? These websites actually are kind of what do you call companies that actually compare, you know, prices for customers, for them to know where the cheapest one is, which one is good, etc. All right. And of course, if they wanted to use a word of mouth, they would have actually couched it differently as well. All right. Now let's look at pre-purchase evaluation. Like you are the only investor in the world. What does it tell you? Yeah, what does it tell you? Like you are the only investor in the world. Pre-purchase evaluation.
I think what it could mean, I think it could mean is that at the point where the person has maybe found about 3 or 4 or 5 of the services that he thinks can satisfy the need that he has. This is the one promise that stood out to him. Exactly. And the company made this promise to communicate that maybe their customer service is very good, right, and you'll be treated as if you are the only investor in the world. So
fantastic.
I think that's what it's trying to communicate here.
Excellent. So this company is actually trying to tell you that we may have 100 million customers, but our philosophy is no matter how small your business is, we treat you as an individual. We pay all the attention to you, and we give you preferential treatment like you are the only person in the world. All right. So here is a company actually giving you that, and that's a pre-purchase evaluation, because they are telling you that we're not like other people who treat you like one of the numbers. And you know, Bobby. Yes, Dora.
Please, I don't understand.
Okay, so we're actually looking at the stages of the consumer behavior, all right, consumer decision making, and then see how do we use those stages to create an advertisement, all right?
Yes, please.
Yeah. to communicate to the customer. So we are saying that I hope you understand the first two, right?
Yes, please, I do.
Yeah. So at the pre-purchase evaluation, what do you say to customer to use you instead of using the others? Actually, to judge that, now I think I will go to company A instead of going to company B.
Okay.
Because pre-purchase means that before you buy, you want to evaluate these two companies where you want to go. Are you with me?
Maybe it's okay. It's fine now.
Excellent, excellent, great. So this company is actually saying that we don't treat you as one of the numbers. And to be very honest with you, I was, obviously you have some minds about how Ghanaian companies work, but one of the attitudes in businesses that I find so strange, and still our people do it, including my own, company, is that sometimes you are talking to a customer, then somebody comes in and then starts speaking to you. I'm sure you have realized that. And then the agent or the advisor switches to the second person, as opposed to paying attention to the one that was there before. So both people, that is the customer and then the supplier, in this case, the service provider, I don't know what is wrong with them. So you're talking to a customer, then somebody goes, oh, excuse me, saying excuse me doesn't mean that, you are in the right. I don't know whether you follow what I'm saying.
Yes, it does happen a lot.
And it happens a lot in our businesses. So you're talking to one customer, then somebody badges it. Oh, excuse me. Then he says, oh, it's a short. No. The one who is engaged has to be finished. They have to finish speaking to that person before you go to the second person. And the advisor will not say, Madam, I'm sorry, let me finish and come back to you. He will say, Then start listening to the second person. Then the first person is standing there waiting for that person to finish. I wouldn't tolerate it. I will not tolerate it, because at the end of the day, it was not casual conversation. It is also a business conversation. Then you come in and say, oh, excuse me, can I? What? I don't know whether you guys understand this animation.
It's true. It happens a lot.
So, and this is the kind of, pre-purchase evaluation that, is talking about. People are treated as
COVID.
Yes.
Sorry to cut you, but it looks like the intruder, they think they have excuse. It happens to us a lot.
Yeah.
You're serving someone enter barge into you like that. You signal him or her, but no. Even some of them take offense when you tell them, "Can I please finish with the gentleman and be with you?" They will get offended.
Yeah, let them be offended. Because for me, I think courtesy-wise, it's not respectful, it's not courteous, and it's very, 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 one of the bad etiquettes is not to give people the privacy. In the first place, you have invaded their privacy. You don't know what they're talking to, what they're saying to this advisor. Maybe it is very, very sensitive to them, all right? Because of their personality, they don't want anybody to hear that they are discussing something. And then you barge in. So you have already invaded the privacy, and on top of it, you are demanding the attention be shifted to you. And we don't keep educating customers. For me, I think the companies have to be putting notices on there that please wait until it's your turn.
That one day.
Yeah, because if people cannot exercise that judgment to know that please, it's not your turn, wait, then you have to start educating people. You have to start telling them in their faces. And if customers will be angry about it, like you were saying, which I'm sure a lot of people will be, all right, you probably want to use a subtle way of educating people about etiquette and saying that please make sure that you only speak or you only come in when it's your turn.
I say that they have paid for the service.
But the one who is talking to you hasn't paid for the service. So I think that we have to actually control, even if the booth has only one person or the service desk has only one person. wait until it's your turn before you speak. And you guys also have to make sure that you have enough people to, especially when there's a lot of queue, because Ghanaians will start bargaining, all right? So you've got to actually find a way of solving it. But I think it's one of the most disrespectful attitudes. I really hate it. I mean, behavior. And people don't see anything wrong with it, all right? So no matter the person's situation, whether it's one of your most important customers or not, please deal with them as people. Satisfy them before you move to the next customer. Don't say that because he's coming for only inquiries and somebody is coming to deposit money, the one depositing money is important than the one having inquiry. Maybe he's having an inquiry so that they can bring more money to you. You don't know, So I think this is what the pre-purchase evaluation statement here means, that would endeavor to treat you as a very important, customer, without, other than others who actually treat you as one of the numbers, all right? Okay, so to purchase consumption, it says first month of life insurance free, all right? So in this case, they're trying to woo people to actually buy into the product. Sometimes people come into the inquiry desk, they make all inquiries. Sometimes they are just about signing an agreement and there's an offer, then immediately they leave. Or sometimes too, they are not sure about the product, all right, that it really works for them until they buy it, and then in 2 weeks' time, they realize that it's not good for them, all right? Now, at that point, at the purchase point, customers want reassurance that indeed the product works for them. So majority of times, businesses that actually promise, let's say, some kind of warranties or guarantees to say that in the first month, it's free. If you think that you don't like it, you can return it in the first month. They tend to have a lot of customers moving through the process to purchase, all right? Because mind you, need recognition, information search, pre-purchase evaluation does not mean that the person had actually bought the product. They have gone through the process, but they could actually pull the brakes at the point of purchase. And you don't want them to actually, depart or exit the chain when they get to pre-purchase evaluation. So what are some of the key things that you can use to bait customers to go ahead and sign up? And most of the time, 1 month free and all these kind of offers, are some of the ways that you can. I remember, in UK, for example, they have a policy which is I think it's 24-day policy for phones, all right, those days. When you go and get a phone contract, and it's 14 days rather, and it's actually applies to most purchases that you do online. So whenever you do an online purchase, you have 14 days return policy. Whatever you buy, most of the consumables, all right. So you buy it, or you have 14 days or 21 days, I think, policy, and within that period, it's expected that you might have received the item, you might have tried it, and then if it was good for you, you keep it. If it's not good for you, within 21 days, you return it, all right? And then you can get your money back. And that was effective because when consumers are not certain about the product, they could use that as an opportunity to examine whether indeed the product actually fulfills their needs. Of course, it has its own downside where people can actually buy something like a tape recorder, right? Like this dictation machine. They will use it within 21 days, they'll make sure that they return it and say that, I don't think it works for me, But of course, as a business, you've got to actually make arrangements to cater for all these, downsides. I hope it's clear up to this point. Yeah? And
yes,
then,
please.
okay, good. And then, of course, the post-purchase evaluation. Customer satisfaction is our number one priority. Now, the company using this message means that they will not abscond immediately after you bought the product. Like circle strategy, Kwame Nkrumah circle strategy, whereby you go and buy something, immediately you bought it, you turn around going, the person moves the table to somewhere else. So you find out that the product is not good. By the time you come, they say, oh, only how, or baby fufro, that the person had moved their table, their wares from where they were to another place, so you can't even locate them. Now, post-purchase evaluation is also one of the key concerns of customers, guarantees, warranties, and all those things. Knowing that if they bought it, even when they have bought the product, is there any what do you call any convincing systems, or is there anything that can assure them that indeed this product is good? And you have companies actually expressing that customer satisfaction is our number one priority, which means that even when you had bought the product, they will still call and check up on you whether you're satisfied with the product or whether you're not. And if you're not, measures that they can take to ensure that the product actually suits your need. So this is a sample advertising, the sample advertisement, copy that actually demonstrates how you use the stages in the consumer decision-making process to create an advertising piece or a communication piece that people can relate to or people can actually rely on in making a purchase. Is that clear? All right, cool. Now, the other framework that you can use, and all these frameworks, you can combine them, all right? And the other time, I think I was talking to one of the classes and I said that some of these frameworks that we see them here, they are no different from what so-called consultants use to take a lot of money from our companies. Only that majority of the businesses may not have time, or maybe your position may not allow you to do some of these things. Otherwise, you could actually be doing them for your own businesses, especially when you have your own businesses. There's no need to actually hire a consultant. You can use these frameworks and create your own pieces, all right? And that's why it's important for you to learn some of these things so that when you start your own business, but that does not mean that you have to put Michael out of business, yeah? You still need, you still need Michael to actually work for you. All right, so the second framework is the communication process. Now, these processes, what we call exposure, attention, processing, acceptance, and retention, are that, the mere fact that you have a billboard there doesn't mean that consumers would actually get to know what you're selling on the billboard, all right? So, and the exposure, there's what we call environmental exposure, which means that the ad is present in the environment, all right? That is, you have put a billboard, colorful billboard, very, very attractive colors, so people can see it, all right? As they're passing by, whether they're driving or they're walking, they can see it. But that's an environmental exposure. Now, whether the senses have actually received the communication is what we call the cognitive exposure. So the ad received by the senses, i.e. the sight, as in the eyes have seen it, taken notice of it, the brain has actually kind of been able to identify it. So if you put an ad, for example, on a billboard, all right, in an environment where in an environment where the population is not, literate, for example, there may be environmental exposure, but cognitive-wise, there is no exposure because they can see the billboard, perhaps they can see if it's pictures and things, yes, they can see. But if it's text material, and even if it were pictures, depending on how the picture is actually constructed, would actually allow cognitive exposure or not. So you have to ensure that the billboard that you are putting actually responds to both environmental exposure and cognitive exposure. That's when you can say that it had worked or it had been effective. All right. Number two is about attention. All right. So the initial focus given to the incoming advertising information, and then the ad may be quickly filtered out and attention terminated. So again, let me see. Okay, Joseph, yeah, let's hear you.
Yeah, Kobe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The first point, exposure.
Yeah.
In respect of environmental exposure versus cognitive.
Yeah.
Now, I want to find out. You said that depending on where the ad is placed, I mean, the environment, whether the people are a bit, let's say they are level-headed or whatever. Now, if the brand is a national brand, it's not all over. Does it mean that you have to vary the kind of ad you do depending on the location? For instance, if you're in East Legon or a first-class residential area, because definitely you know that the cognitive abilities of those people are very high, as juxtaposed with maybe the rural area. So do you go to the rural area and do maybe a local content one? You do it in a local setting, maybe the writing, the language will be in their local language, knowing that when you put English there, people understand or what. So do you vary them as
you are fantastically right. And that's why even when it comes to the use of celebrities, all right, or the use of certain individuals, you even vary it, because you know that perhaps if the advert is in Kumasi and have Lewin on it, perhaps the exposure is very high than perhaps having maybe funny face on it, all right? So you're very, very right. Now, the characteristics of the consumers is very, very important. And I keep telling the political parties that, because I do political consulting, so I keep telling political parties that they are number one culprits of this particular framework. Political parties, and get into this election, you will see it. They will always cite the same billboard across the country with Nanado's head and Mohammed's head, all right? And I keep telling them that, what effect do you think this will actually have? You have 275 constituencies, all right, across this country, 16, regions, plus 100 and something districts. And wherever you move, in fact, when you're driving along the Cape Coast Road, you will see Nanado's head on a billboard, Mohammed's head on a billboard, Kwesindum's head on a billboard. Are you technically telling me that all the constituencies actually like the candidate? No. There are certain constituencies whose preference or whose connection to the party is as a result of the party's image, the Osono or the umbrella, right? Now, there are some constituencies who are very much into what policy or what is your flagship policy. So we're looking at your free SHS or your infrastructure policy that is so, flagship, or your, what do you call, small business, support policy. Places like East Legon, where a lot of people own their own businesses or their top CEOs, they want to look at what is your flagship policy. Yet our political parties don't learn. They put the candidate head across the country as if each constituency is the same. But just like Joseph, you're explaining, they are not the same. The characteristics are completely different. So you couldn't have one cap fit all for all customers. No, the characteristics, even if they are middle class customers, mind you, middle class customers in Kumasi are completely different from middle class customers in Sekondi Takoradi. They would differ from middle class customers perhaps in Cape Coast, or middle class customers in Tamale. So you've got to actually take into consideration these nuances, all right, these differences, in order to inform the cognitive exposure. Are you with me? So it's a fantastic point that you make. All right, is that clear?
Yes, Kobe.
Okay, excellent. Michael, your hand is up.
Yes, hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to also just chip in here to Kobe's question with a practical example that we use even in digital marketing and on the online spaces. Okay, so for example, if digital marketing is done the correct way, because usually it is not, what you find out is that if you go to somebody to market a product for you online, they will do the one size fits all.
Yeah.
For me and from my experience so far, I can also understand why. There's limited resources. You usually have one person doing a lot of jobs. So there's not enough time to even think so much and devise a proper strategy that would fulfill the needs of everybody in the various target segments that you have drawn. But if digital marketing is actually done right, and this should also trickle down to offline, what you do is that, just like we have said, you would first draw different target markets. So you might have about 2 or 3, and then each of them have a particular profile. So maybe for your primary target, the people who consume this service the most, you find out that maybe they're about 25 to 40, maybe they have about 1 child, 2 children, they're still young, so on and so forth. Then maybe you would realize that the second target are probably much younger, no kids, just about to finish university, don't have too much money to spend, so on and so forth. Now, after you divide all these 2 or 3 different targets, you then have to find out where they spend most of their time online. So, for example, you may find out that for the much younger ones, they spend their time on Instagram the most.
Yeah.
For the other ones, they spend their time on Facebook. Maybe others prefer email. And then when you are targeting the adverts, you have to make sure that if it's Instagram, you are speaking in a young language, you are using maybe a few slang words, the imagery is of young people. Yeah. Maybe if you are doing the advert on Facebook, it's the same service, but instead you use a little more formal language, you use different imagery because of the target market who is there. And then maybe for the older demographics, you make sure that it's just a straight email, straight to the point with the service. So just to say that that's how it is supposed to be done. It's the same service, but you see that different people who consume that service. And then you have to, ideally, what you should be doing is creating different adverts for those different people and making sure that you reach them where they are most likely to be.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Good point. And that even comes to the home, isn't it? Imagine that whenever, for those of us who have children, our kids, whenever you're sending a text message, WhatsApp to your daughter or your son, you get a reply back in a very short-handed manner. All right. So whilst you are writing your full good night or how are you and things, they're actually writing shorthands. Whether you understand or not, that's not their beef. All right. Then you have to write back and say, what do you mean by this? And then, and that's the characteristics. I remember when yesterday I was actually chatting with my son on WhatsApp, and he was telling me that the mom says when he has to come to Ghana for boarding house, he would go to my school or his brother's school, but his brother's school is the best. I said, no, you shouldn't be kidding. My school is the best. Then he started laughing, and he's using emojis to make his expressions, all right? And some of the emojis, I don't understand it. So I have to go back and say, Kuku, what does this mean? Then he starts laughing, The same way. I mean, customers of different demographics, and different, psychographic, characteristics. So you've got to actually identify these and then incorporate that into the communication in order to show the distinction or to let them know that you understand their peculiarities, and as a result, you appeal to their peculiarities, right? So that's what it should be, and good contribution. Again, the attention bit, we should understand that sometimes the attention span is so short that, of course, products and services plus many other things are actually competing for the attention of the customer. So they may come in and be filtered out, quickly. Now, how do you actually sustain an attention span is part of the, this level 2, and some businesses will use certain incentives, like loyalties, like, using some background music that appeals to people, and that's the reasons why companies actually, do that, because you've got to actually find a way of, one, attracting the attention and retaining it. And how to do that is about the, the motivations, things that could actually motivate the customer to pay attention and to continue to pay attention to you. You have to actually identify that. Now, the 3 is about processing and acceptance. Now, if you put a billboard, all right, by the roadside, clearly you're going to have the environmental exposure. And if you go a step further by, identifying the characteristics of the target market around that area, you can gain cognitive exposure. But don't forget, the billboard cannot go through all the information that you need. For example, satisfy, need recognition up until, evaluation of alternatives, etc. So you probably want to use other channels for elaboration. So point 3, processing and acceptance. Elaboration perhaps could be done online. And that's why you could actually put, or it's advisable to put very few message on the billboard, and then perhaps have a very big writings of your website, where if the message on the billboard is interesting, the customer will go to the website and then fish out for more information, for elaboration. Again, that's the reason why you may want to add, let's say, a newspaper to ensure repetition, because for the newspaper, if the person actually needs to have access to that information, they can fish it out from their drawer and then get the information that they need. Now, if you have only a billboard and the person is trying to recollect that advert because they need that product, mind you, they have to drive past that billboard before they could see it. What if they don't get the opportunity to drive past that billboard? So that's why the idea of IMC, integrated marketing communication, is crucial, so that you can combine, different channels. For example, if you're using online digital, spaces, but you don't combine that with, let's say, a newspaper, which somebody can actually make references because of the repetition, ability of a newspaper, people can actually go back there. If the digital, ad is for 1 month and it's taken off, that's it. The person has no opportunity to actually see it again. But if you have done it in a newspaper, people who actually keep that newspaper will be able to actually go back there to actually, have a look at it and then, act on it. Then of course, Then of course, retention, as in remembering the content of the ad, which is part of the long-term memory, and the use of the information remembered for decision making. Again, you have to look at, the characteristics that would actually help people to retain or to actually recollect the ad. And some companies actually look, or some ads may look at some popular music, because immediately the music comes to mind, that ad comes to mind, all right? Or some actors or actresses that could actually facilitate, what you call recall. Don't forget that recall is actually dependent on what we call notes, all right? And the notes must be that, what is your parent note, i.e., the note that could actually bring out the other, recollection. So I have a particular way of saving numbers in my phone, and sometimes when my friends see them, they laugh, all right? And I say, well, because there are certain things that are, certain notes that actually come to mind quickly. So imagine that I meet you on University of Ghana campus, all right? And I meet you around the post office, and we exchange conversations, and I write your name. Because it's the first time meeting you, there's no point writing Joseph Nketia there, because chances are I may forget it because it's the first time. Now, if I actually write, Joseph Nketia, and I put, let's say, Legon Post Office, suddenly I could remember that I met a guy at Legon Post Office. When I put in Legon Post Office in my phone memory, it will pull your name out, isn't it? And that's how recall retention actually works. You have to look at the parent note that could actually pull the rest of the notes, all right? So you use the parent note as a point of recall. So when adverts are being, done, you're asking yourself, what notes could you actually activate into this advertisement that could help somebody to recall that particular product or recall that particular brand? And it's very, very crucial. I once again remember my senior brother take me to, a place in East Legon. We were going to visit some company, and it was my first time, so I didn't know the area very well. Now, my senior brother came from Takrady. So when he left, 2 weeks later, he asked me to go and chase up the company again. Then I had forgotten, the place. But I remember that there was a pharmacy And I'm sure by now some of you maybe know that pharmacy. There was a pharmacy at that place, all right, East Legon there, which apparently was one of the popular, pharmacies around that area. But guess what? I have forgotten the name. Why did I forget? Because the pharmacy is called Media Pharmacy. How many of you know Media Pharmacy? Have you heard?
Yes, we know it.
You know Media Pharmacy?
Yeah, Lagos Avenue. Yes, yes.
Exactly. But imagine, look at the name, Media Pharmacy. All right. I mean, what's the relationship? All right. The idea of media is nowhere related to pharmacy or medicine or anything health. All right. So as a first timer, I was struggling to remember this pharmacy's name. I knew it was a pharmacy, but to recall that the pharmacy is called Media Pharmacy, I had no clue. I struggled before I got to know it. And that actually tells you about branding, brand names, and recall. Advertising, advertisement, and recall. You cannot have, or you can, but having two, abstractive words or two unrelated words coming together, it's very, very difficult for people to recall unless you promote it over and over and over and over again before people come to make. To be conversant with it. Now, the advantage is when people become conversant with it, then it stays with them forever. All right. That's why we have certain logos like iconoclastic logos, etc. It has to be something that people can remember. If it's difficult to be remembered, then know that you have to spend a lot of money promoting it in order that it can stick in people's memories. Are you with me? Any question or contributions here? All right. So, yeah. Okay, Joseph. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Kobe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When we come to processing and acceptance,
yeah,
on elaboration.
Yeah.
Now, I want to draw attention to this so that you can help all of us.
Yeah.
Sometimes you drive around and you see this advert on the billboard.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you see the advert, all right,
mm-hmm.
but the contact details,
mm-hmm.
either the address or the telephone number, it's so small or you can't easily read it. You can't easily see it. Now, are we interested more in what is put there or the contact address or telephone number? Then secondly, when you drive around, you see very car for sale. Then you see the for sale, sometimes very big, with a small telephone number, the font. I don't know whether the guy doesn't want the car to be bought or what. So you can't, maybe you want to drive for a very long time.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I don't know, for sale, it can't very bold. Then the number which you're interested in rather come very small. So before I realize, it's just out of your sight.
That's right.
So
very, very good observation. Yeah, you're very right. Now, I had, and I'm surprised I didn't even bring it in earlier. I'd always questioned billboards that are very far distant from the road or even by the road with telephone numbers. I don't actually understand the idea behind it. All right. You have a billboard that is supposed to be by the roadside. And you know conditions of driving. That one, you're supposed to concentrate on driving, not pay attention to all these. What is best to put on as a contact is your website. All right? Because these days, because of search engine, we do not have to actually put www. Isn't it? And that's why the search, platforms actually made it possible for us to just search with a name, as opposed to search with or putting the URL. So instead of putting a telephone number, why don't you put the website boldly? So www.coconut.com, all right? So that the person goes and he knows that he's going to put coconut.com for this elaboration that we're talking about. But you see billboards with plenty of inscription. And I even asked myself, who can actually have time, even if it's in the traffic, all right? Because you're supposed to follow the traffic as well. would read all these plenty things before they come to the telephone number and then chew the telephone number in their head and then call you. So fantastic point that you've made. They are all not necessary. What is necessary is that what is the point of anchor? What do you think can excite the consumer? Cognitive exposure, all right? So, hooray, you can win 100,000 Ghana cedis. Check on www.so-and-so. So the person drives straight home. He's going to check www for that 100,000. There you have elaboration, telephone number, email address, this, and that. But why do you put all these on the website, on a billboard? That is supposed to be transient, something that people will just see and pass. So you are very, very right. Again, with the cars that you're talking about, clearly the person is actually saying that they shouldn't buy it, or is only looking at people who are actually walking. But ask yourself, those who are walking, what is their buying capacity? Their ability to buy a car? Certainly those who are driving, but why do you have a for sale big and then small telephone number? Not even a web address. Of course, you may not have a web address as an individual consumer, or individual car owner. But the telephone number is supposed to be big, and even if you put those cars at the point of where people are driving, that alone, sort of negates the whole thing, because again, you may not have people being able to chew the number in their head or be able to write down the number. So fantastic points that you've raised. All right. Michael, you wanted to say something, or Joseph will come again?
Yeah, Kobe, just a quick one.
Okay.
Now, with regards to the vehicles, is there any law banning them from putting or writing or pasting the amount of the vehicle, the value of the vehicle? Because you call the guy, I'm at this so and so chop back, please come there. You get there, one band them me call. You go and meet him at the beach. I'm at the beach. Come there. Blah blah. You be going merry-go-round and you be wasting your time.
I'm telling you, pricing is one of the, I don't know how to put it. It looks like is the what's the word? It's like a ritual, disclosing pricing. See, even if you look at our normal sales guys, right? They may say a whole lot of things, and then they will be leaving the pricing at the bottom. Then you keep on saying, so how much is it? Then wait, do you get it? Then they will sum up a whole story. So how much is it? The point is that when you are actually selling, as we got to know from the beginning of it, where is the anchor? All right. We learned about anchor and adjustments, isn't it? Yeah. You must understand that the consumer's anchor is here. All right. And the consumer's adjustment is these variables. So if the anchor is price, you want to first of all say, okay, in the first place, this item is not expensive. It's about 100,000. Then perhaps the other attributes are the adjustment, whether 100,000 they think is value for money or they think it's expensive. All right. But people will never talk about price. And I have argued, on campus with my colleagues that we should put fees on the website. But the argument is competitors are watching. But the point is that you want to give consumers information for price evaluation, for evaluation of alternatives, isn't it? So whether competitors are watching or not, the idea is that, do you believe in your product? Do you believe in what you're offering? And do you believe that regardless of the price, people will still find your other attributes compelling and proceed? But it looks like in this country, price and the mention of it is like discussing sex with your child. All right. People would never mention price when they are dealing with customers. They will dance around the issue before they come to, and the price is this. Then the customer goes, but you've made me listen to, I can't afford. All right. So you are very, very right in these observations, Joseph. So I think it's something that we have to actually deal with it, because surely you mention the price. Why do you have to go round and round and round and round before you realize that the consumer cannot afford? Sometimes we feel that we need to convince them and hook them to it with the other attribute before we come to the price. But it doesn't work like that, because the consumer's anchor is on the price. Other things would help them adjust to it. So if price is the most essential attribute for the consumer, just tell them, have a nice way of telling them that, well, I'm going to tell you, the benefits of this, but I know that you'll be interested in the price. But of course, the benefit, when it comes in, you would know that it fits the price. The price is 100,000. There are great benefits to it. That it is the way we communicate, and the way we have the confidence in projecting what we have for people to really indeed see that it is of value. All right. Good observation. Thank you. All right. Any other points? Any other, contribution? So we realize that, either we're using the consumer decision-making framework or the communication process framework, you must blend the channels, all right? You must blend the channels. You must pay attention to the consumer's characteristics. And then, of course, you must tailor that to the kind of attributes that would actually make sense to them, for them to proceed in buying or to proceed to buy the product, all right? Good. Now, again, the next, framework that you can use is what we call the hierarchy of effect model. The hierarchy of effect model also works just like the, the two other models that we've identified. Of course, it says that any communication will have an effect unless it goes through these processes, all right, this hierarchy of processes. One, if people do not know about the product, they cannot buy it. So you have to create awareness. Two, if people do not have enough knowledge about a product, they will not buy it. So you have to create knowledge. Three, they have to like it. Four, they have to have a preference for it. Five, they have to be convinced that it's a good purchase before they buy it. So remember that awareness is different from knowledge. And just like we explained at the cognitive exposure and environmental exposure, awareness is just about exposure, all right? Sometimes we use these words interchangeably, but in the detailed form, when we say, are you aware of this? It says yes. Why? Because you have seen it, you have smelled, you smell it, or you have heard it, so you are aware. But being aware doesn't mean that you know it, all right? Knowledge is cognition. Like you could identify it and you could make judgment of it, all right? So we interchangeably use awareness and knowledge, but they are not the same. So being aware of the product, the next point is that, do you know it? Which means that, do you know what it does? Do you know its attributes? I mean, the makeup of it, what was used to do the product? Do you know its variations or the differences of them? Do you know how that is different from the other product? Are you with me? So you can be aware of the drink, like there's a drink called Voltic, but you don't have knowledge about it because you don't know the ingredient in Voltic. So the hierarchy of effect model says that before customers actually buy, they go through this process. They want to know it, they want to be aware of it, they want to know it, they want to like it, they want to prefer it, and then, they will purchase in the end. So again, you create awareness with certain channels, all right? And then with those channels, and don't forget, it's not like you're using only one channel for awareness, one channel for knowledge. You can create all in one channel, all right? Let's say you produce a leaflet or a brochure. In the introduction stage of the brochure, there's a big heading at the top and say, Voltic mineral water, all right? So that heading actually creates awareness that there's a water called Voltic, all right? There's a type of water called Voltic. So Voltic mineral water. And then in the introduction page, you say Voltic mineral water is produced through a very extensive, chemical something. Then you explain. But then as you're explaining, those terminologies are actually explained or discussed in a very relatable manner that the person can actually appreciate what it means by CO2 or what it means by carbon or what it means by all that kind of terminology that you have used in there. In the end, when you had finished writing that, can the customer actually relate to what is Voltic mineral water when somebody asks them? So somebody asked and say, do you know water called Voltic? Oh, yes. All right. But do you know it's actually an awareness? And then he says, okay, but what does it do? Or do you know much about it? Then they come to say, oh, yeah, it's made up of this and that. Do you get it? So that's awareness and knowledge. Now, liking is about, emotive, what do you call, connection. So awareness and knowledge are more cognitive, based. Liking is more emotive, i.e., you have expressed certain emotional disposition towards the brand or towards the product. So in liking, it's almost like an attitude, all right? You either, it's good or bad or neutral. So you either like it or you don't like it, or you are indifferent about it. Now, when we want to create a likeness for a product, then things like, for example, loyalty schemes, relationships, all right, come in. Maybe people would use, let's say, buy one, get one free, for example, to create liking. Anything that would actually get the person to have a positive predisposition towards the item. Some businesses or some brands will use celebrity endorsement, all right? So there's a celebrity that people like so much, and they are actually deploying that celebrity to sell the product. So you see the celebrity drinking that water in order that the followers of that celebrity would have some, positive predisposition towards the drink. And that's the liking stage, all right? Now, the preference is about, as we said, what do you call pre-purchase evaluation. Preference is always in comparison with something. So you put two bottled water there, and then you're asking someone, which one is your preference? So whenever you want to create a preference or you want to test consumers on preference, you know that you have to actually do a comparison of two brands for them to demonstrate their preferred choice. So preference go beyond liking. So the person likes this, but don't forget the person could also like another thing or another brand of the same category. Now, if you want to actually compare whether they like yours more than them, that's where preference come in. And say, okay, these two, which one do you prefer? Say, okay, yeah, I like both, but I think I prefer A, I prefer B, all right? Now, conviction is also, a deep end of what we call, affective end of the process, because we have what we call, cognitive, affective, and connection, all right? Now, the affective end actually looks at the things that we have said. One, liking, preference, and then conviction. At the tail end of or at the very extreme end of, the affective is the conviction. Conviction means that the consumer has said that we are in a day, this is what I want. It means that whatever you do to this consumer, this is their preferred brand, all right? It's an extreme part of loyalty or the extreme part of, likeness or affection, because it's almost like an ideological dogma, and says, as for me, my choice is this one. You can add promotion, you can add 10 Ghana cedis to whatever you are selling. I would not depart from this to that. It is like, I personally have one what do you call, conviction. No matter what you do to me, iPhone is what I buy. Look, Samsung can go and bring what do you call, Michael Jackson real life, and then use it for their ringtone. I like Michael Jackson, but I would never buy Samsung. So I've gotten to that stage of conviction that no matter what you do to any phone brand, you can never take me from Apple to any of these brands. That's the tail end of affection. Like the person, maybe in the those who are very, very spiritual, you call it agape love, right? You call it agape love. That's the extreme point where people actually get to. They are so convinced that this is the brand that they like and nothing else. All right. Now, at the last end of it, before they buy, so the hierarchy of effect model says that before people actually buy things, they go through this process to the end that they get convinced that this is the choice that I want, and then they buy, which is the cognitive end of the process. Now, the cognitive end of the process also doesn't end at purchase, all right? It also includes recommendation, because we end up recommending people, say, oh, yeah, this brand is okay, but I will recommend to you this particular brand. So word of mouth or recommendation is also one of the activities in connection, or one of the activities at the tail end, not only purchase, but also recommending it. But it could be negative as well. It could be that the person really despises that brand to the level that they are so convinced that this product, whatever you do, I will not buy, all right? So that also can happen. That is the negative part of it. Yep, any contribution or question? Is it clear to you guys? Is it clear to everybody?
Yes, Kobe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the hierarchy of effect model. So we've discussed, consumer decision-making model. We've discussed the communication process model. Now we've discussed the hierarchy of effect model. And the sequence or the steps in the hierarchy of effect model, as it's been highlighted. It says that the steps are sequential. Some experts question the sequentiality of it. Some people say that it may not be sequential. People can actually jump from one stage to the other. Of course, these are all theoretical debates. But key is that consumers actually go through this process in choosing what to buy. And as I said, we call it attitudinal sequence, which actually comes from the cognitive, affective, and cognitive, i.e., awareness and knowledge, all right, liking and preference, and then conviction and purchase. Now, there's also a theory that not always would people actually go through cognitive, affective, cognitive, i.e., awareness, knowledge, liking, preference, and conviction. Sometimes the reverse is the case, all right? There are certain purchase behaviors that actually start from cognitive to cognitive. And typical is, when people do, let's say, mall intercepts. What we mean by mall intercepts is that, sometimes new product come, maybe some new type of food or drink, right? So they go and activate at the mall, and people are passing and say, oh, would you want to taste this, my pancake? It's so nice. The person doesn't know the detail of it, but then decides to try it, all right? So they take the pancake, they eat, they say, that's really nice, because the taste, the smell, everything sounds great for them. Then immediately they want to buy before they end up getting to know really the ingredient. So with certain product types, sometimes you can actually move from cognitive to cognitive without necessarily moving from cognitive to cognitive. And I think majority of time agencies actually explore some of these, methods for putting out communication for, organizations. And sometimes if you look at, financial product, there are times where you will see that in an advert, money is actually given to somebody, it transforms their life before they get to know that, oh, this is the repayment, this is whatever, that kind of actually things involved in it. So there are many ways of exploring the effectiveness of these methodologies, in communicating a product, or a service. Now, there is also the other side about moving from affective to cognitive to cognitive. That's where sometimes, you have somebody just like your favorite actor or your celebrity or your role model. You see that the person is doing something. You have no idea what the details are, but because it's your role model, immediately that recommendation goes, whether directly or indirectly. You also want to buy it before you get to know the details of it. So you can actually move from affective. So people become, or they feel in love, or they fall in love with something even before they come to know the thing itself or the product itself. That is also possible, all right? Depending on how effective the communication is created, you can, kind of spring it each way, all right? So this is the diagram, how it looks. Awareness, knowledge is actually a cognitive, liking, preference, conviction is affective, and then connective is purchase. And as I said, with connective, you can also add word of mouth, as in recommendations, etc. All right. Now, let me take this off. Yeah, so these are some of the personal values that we could use in communicating product, attributes: comfortable life, equality, excitement, freedom, fun, exciting life, etc. All these are attributes that we can use to market product, to fit, people's, wants or needs. Any question? Now, there's also a theory called, and remember what we are studying today, we're looking at advertising, or broadly speaking, communication. How do we communicate our financial products to customers? And we're saying that there are frameworks that can help us to craft the communication in order that the communication will be effective in targeting people's needs, all right? One of the theories is also called means-end theory, all right? Means-end theory, what it means is that, our access to products, all right, always go through certain, processes. Now, if you look at, the felling of trees, out of which we get books, isn't it? Or we get, paper, all right? Which means that the end result sometimes is what is needed, or sometimes the possession of the item itself is what is needed, all right? So you look at product attributes, its benefit, and its personal value. So in this case, means-end theory says that you first of all want to look at product attributes. If you're marketing a product, the first layer is the product attribute. The next layer is its benefits. The next layer is its personal value. But in most cases, if you want to have a very compelling communication, very persuasive communication, the communication must be hinged on the value, the personal value of the consumer. That is, how does the product actually tie into the personal value of the consumer, all right? So if the consumer actually is someone who values, let's say, public perception about them, all right? The way people view them, all right? Now, selling a car would not, to this particular person, would not be dependent on what attributes are in the car, but how does the car reflect on their personality in order that people's perception about them will be enhanced. Are you with me on this? Is that clear to you guys?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's saying that if you actually, the means-end theory is saying that if you're actually selling a Rolex watch, all right, to a consumer, it is not so about that the watch has TikTok, or it's a digital one, or it has a battery that is a lifetime battery, or it has a gold-plated whatever, all right? But the key is that how does the knowledge that the person is wearing Rolex, all right, reflect on the individual's own self-value, all right, or individual's own self-wealth, because that person places value on their self-worth. Like, how do people see me and see that, yes, I am Kojo rich man, and I also, and that is actually about the product, what do you call, name, the Rolex, and knowing that the brand name Rolex, just a minute. Yeah, I'm in class. Yeah, I'll finish. I'll call you. Okay, all right, thanks. Yeah, one of my colleagues. So the question is that it is so much about the brand name Rolex. That is what will make this person buy the product, but not necessarily that the product has what long lifespan of battery, etc. Because this individual is so much concerned about how do people see me, right? In this sense, perhaps the Rolex has to be a little bit bigger. The name Rolex has to be a little bit visible, or there must be certain images, or there must be certain, what do you call it, things on the watch that could actually project to people that, yes, this watch that the guy is wearing is Rolex before they can buy it. All right. Now, there are certain purchases too that are not means to an end, but they are also end in themselves, which means that the possession of itself, possession of the product itself is a complete, sellout. So you've got to actually understand the way consumers actually perceive certain purchases and then tie that into that perception in order that you'll be successful in actually, selling that product to them. So if I give you two scenarios, all right, for example, a gentleman who lives in a village. In that village, all that people drive or they ride is bicycle, all right? Now, this gentleman happens to, get the cocoa money and they want to buy Tico, all right? Now, Tico is a car, all right? That car moves from one end or can take you, obviously, a car is a transport means, all right? Takes you from one end to the other end. Now, in this scenario, do you think that the purchase that is being made by Ejakojo is actually a means end theory purchase, or what do you call a value in itself purchase? All right, is it means to an end, purchase, or a purchase that is value in itself? Do you understand it?
Can you come again, sir?
Okay, so I'm saying that in some purchases, all right, it is means to an end purchase. So you know that when you buy water, all right, drinking the water is means to an end, which means that you are thirsty, you buy the water, you consume before you gain the satisfaction, all right?
Okay.
Now, the other purchases, just like you bought a Mercedes, top range Mercedes, all right? Now, that purchase could be an end in itself because even without driving it, all right, you find value in it because it reflects on your personality. Are you with me? It gives you a certain image, a certain, character, personality out there. Now, with this scenario of this gentleman in the village where everybody rides bicycle and he's got the money to buy Tico, you are selling that Tico to this guy. Are you using means to an end theory to sell to them, or you are using a value in possession to sell to them?
I think it will be value in possession.
Value in possession. Explain why.
It's like since everybody's using a bike, and he could have equally purchased a bike, but he wanted to buy a ticket, and the value, how will I say? I mean, it's kind of prestige as compared to the rest of the people using the bike.
That's correct. So it's giving him prestige in the village that everybody knows that Ejakojo has a Tico when all of them are driving or riding bicycle. So he may not even be using the Tico, but the respect and the inchia she's going to get in that village is more, all right? So in that sale to Ejakojo, you are talking about the self-respect, the perception of a certain class that he would actually gain in that community, all right? So in this sense, the value is in possession without necessarily using it, all right? He still gains some value, all right? Now, let's bring a Jakojo back to Accra, where people have, other top range cars. Is his purchase still value in possession or means end value?
It means end.
Why?
At least everybody drives, so he has a car to drive. But then asking the question whether it's valuable to the society where he has moved to is another thing.
That's right.
So, yeah.
Because people have top range things there, all right? That actually goes beyond what he has. So in this sense, it will be means to an end because it just be value that is in transporting him from one end to the other. All right, great. All right, Joe.
Jacoby, yeah. Yep. What I can say is that yes, it's means to an end. Since this time around, it's the intrinsic value of it that matters, but not that significance of in the village where he's a talisman and he's a champion and all that. So
that's right.
Yeah, this time around,
that's correct. That's correct.
That you get from it.
Yeah. So whenever we're actually selling, we have to look at the context, all right, that we find or the consumer finds themselves, and then also identify the motivation of the consumer, because sometimes the value is means to an end, sometimes the value is in possession. And that's how sometimes when you see certain rich people, they're actually driving some ordinary cars, but they feel good about themselves. Everybody knows that this guy, he owns a helicopter or he owns a jet or something, all right? So you see, what do you call Richard Branson and co., and they are somehow, they look unkempt, etc. Because the reflection of society on them, and even within themselves, know that they have some things that are far more than what value in a means to an end value, all right? And so that reflection is there. Now, the same person, let's say you can have a rich guy in the community. He's rich, but he's not as rich as Richard Branson. So again, if you're selling maybe a Porsche to this person, or you're selling, let's say, a Bugatti to this person, it could be value in possession, but to Richard Branson, it may not be value in possession. So you see the differences in context when you're actually using these theories in communicating. So when you're actually designing your communication, plan or your advertisement or your advertising content, you want to look at all these contexts. Who is the customer? What's the situation they find themselves in? What's the society? What are the values that they appreciate, etc.? And what are the values of this item that you're selling? In order to craft, the communication to suit that context. Great contribution. Okay. So any questions? Okay. So let's say that we are selling milk, and that's what it says. The attributes of the milk is low fat. The benefit is that healthy, it gives healthy body. But the personal value here is self-respect, all right, and wisdom. Why? Because when people look healthy, all right, they look presentable, and so they gain self-respect. So if you're selling the milk, from that perspective of, let's say, value in possession, or means to an end value, you're looking at a chain of, attributes in that milk, and its end product, in order that you would package that into the communication. So you're not saying that it's a low-fat milk, all right, which is the attribute, but you're actually saying that as for this milk, when you drink it, you gain self-respect, all right, because that's the end value to the consumer that you want to actually promote, and that would actually, attract, the purchase. All right. Now, okay, yeah, Joe.
Yeah, probably quick one.
Yeah.
So in local parlance, can you say that when you take this milk, which is low in fat, you kama.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Yeah. That's the thing. You remember those days? I don't know. Maybe my generation. those days, Malta Guinness was sold as such. All right, people thought that when you drink Malta Guinness, you know. And there was a theory. I don't know whether it was everywhere, but at least in Takrady, I know there was a theory that you buy Malta Guinness and you put it in egg. All right, fresh egg. So people will crack fresh egg and they'll put Malta Guinness in it, stir it, and they will drink it because they will look kama, like the skin will look kama, you know? And that's how Malta Guinness was being sold at the time. Obviously, times have changed. So people have seen that perhaps you didn't actually look kama after all. All right.
Doug, which year was this?
Oh, yeah. Oh, early 90s. I mean, I remember when I was in. You see how the times have changed. Go back. you guys didn't meet it, but you know, even in St. Augustine's College, I remember those days. When we come home, Charlie, you want to buy Malta Guinness and put egg, and then because you want to go to school and then you look fresh. And for some reason, people were, you know, they would drink Malta Guinness with egg, and they want to look at their skin and think that they are looking fresh. You know, it was so funny, but people did that, you know. And I think malt actually gained currency in that sense. All right. I don't know whether somebody actually created that miscommunication or misinformation, but it worked in the society. You know, people were doing it. At least within my community, I knew people were doing that, you know, thinking that they would look fresh. The same way about hair, all right? I think some I don't know what the information was about rub. When you put it on your beard, all right, like in your on your chin, you start growing beard. So those days we'll buy rub and then we'll do this, we'll put it here, all right? Wanting to have sideburns and all that. I don't know. Yeah. Who witnessed some of these things?
I didn't so.
Okay, I did.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we witnessed these things. I mean, it was so strange in the society, but you know, and I remember the issue about chibum, right? Chibum was so popular. You know, this fried egg, you know, people will pile it up because at those days, looking big or looking fat was the norm, not chingy chingy around. People want to be chingy chingy, but this, it's so funny. Eh? Those days, women actually wanted to have body instead of being slim. All right. So you in the evening you go to Chibom stand and people will actually pile up egg, like they will buy 4 eggs, put it in what do you call bread. They will consume all, you know, because they want to see the body like, yeah. Okay.
Yes, I'm right.
Kukwa says that when you are pregnant, you may be advised to drink Malta Guinness and milk to keep your hemoglobin high. Yeah, exactly. I don't know whether it was true, but yeah, people were doing it, isn't it? Kukwa. So these are some of the things, you know, that actually came into the society. People were doing it. And that's the reason, because you're looking at the end results. You know, what do people want to achieve? At that time, people want to be big, want to be seen big. In fact, if you're a bank manager and you didn't have a big stomach, Masa, and I sure that when you go for an interview for that branch position and you don't have this big belly, they will say that our bank manager, customers won't come. You know. So these are some of the, you know, but society is changing, you know. So all these are now behind us. But there are other new theories, isn't it? There are other new theories. I mean, millennials, Bridget, what is the new theory for you guys?
As for that one, it's normal.
It's normal. What is normal?
It's now when you do sales, then you qualify to be a manager.
Yeah, yeah. But what about social settings? I mean, the young people, young girls, young boys. What is your you know, your narrative like in nowadays? Where if you want to grow beard, you have to buy, you know, rope and then put it sideburns. What are some of you guys your theories?
Well, I am not into that. So
Okay, you
anything goes on.
feel like you are too corporate. You are not actually going into the society to know what is happening. Okay, great. All right, let's move on then. Okay, so the next theory is obviously the execution, framework, and I'm sure Michael has a lot to say even on this one. When you are determining to communicate the ad, after you have actually done the production, I mean part of the putting the production together, you also want to ask yourself whether Joe, is your hand still up or you have a question?
Sorry, old hand. Sorry.
Okay, okay. All right. So you want to actually ask yourself whether the ad will be properly, will be effectively executed with humor, or with logical argument, or with affective impact. So we see that some ads are humorous. Some ads are logical. Reasoning. Of course, you would think that with financial ads, I don't know who has actually taken notice. Do our financial ads actually go with logical argument or humor? Who can answer that? Who has observed? I hardly watch TV, so I haven't paid attention to most of our ads, how they are. Who has an idea? Or those on radio and things like that? I think majority of it is argument, right?
Yeah, I think majority of it is argumented. You may have a few affective impact as well, but usually not humor.
That's right. Yeah, usually not humor. And that's one of the things that we talked about, the unexciting nature of financial. Because you see, humor in most cases couldn't do it because of the nature of it. I mean, somebody needs a loan, somebody needs funeral in kind of arrangement, somebody needs insurance. Maybe somebody's had an accident. You are showing in a video, on TV, somebody's had an accident. I don't think that humor really would do it for you. So majority of times you're looking at logical arguments, maybe someone is driving at a top speed and then crashes. It's a logical argument because obviously speed is related to accident in most cases because you're not careful, all right? And then it happens. And then of course, bless you. And then of course, once the accident happens, there's a help for them. And, so majority of times is a logical argument, kind of, execution, strategy or execution approach. And then of course, affective impact. So you see a lot more, maybe, yes.
Yes, like during promotions, sometimes there are some few humor parts in the advertisement.
Yeah.
Like depots, like a liability drive. I quite remember when we were at Backlist, we did something like that. You bring in let's say an amount, then you win some incentive. And I've forgotten what we used, but there was something something that you can laugh about.
Okay. Yeah. So,
one thing I've also realized is that on radio, a lot of banks go for jingles and music. That's on radio.
Yeah, exactly. So they go for jingles and music as a way of recall. And one thing is that because radio has a limitation, obviously TV has the opportunity of multimedia. Radio has a limitation. So they try to play on that retention, that recall a lot, in order that the ad can be effective. Now, let me use a few minutes left to play you guys a video of some of the ads, and then let's see whether we can make judgment of them. We can analyze them, all right? Unfortunately, I am not able to show Ghanaian ads because majority of them, and I'm sure Michael will agree with me, they are not online. I don't know why Ghanaian companies do not allow, their kind of these things to be online. But so when it comes to examples, unfortunately, I have foreign ones to show you, other than Ghanaian ones. Because when you search for them, you don't get them. So let me see. Okay. Of Scotland. So I'll show you Bank of Scotland ad. Now, please listen to the ad watch the scenes, etc., whilst you are listening, and then when it stops, we'll analyze it, from the frameworks that we've discussed. All right, that is whether you're using, the consumer decision-making process, you're using the communication, or you're using any of these, you can apply it to your analysis. All right, so I will start with this. I will just stop this sharing of the slide in the meantime, and then play this one. Okay, let's see this. Okay. All right, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna play the video and listen to it. The accent is a little bit, because it's Scottish accent, but I'm sure you would get to hear what they're saying. So let's go.
When your Monday to Friday's been a wee bit hectic, you'll be happy to hear that Bank of Scotland have more than 80 branches open for business on Saturdays. And when it's been a long day, you'll be relieved to know you can call our UK-based call centres anytime, day or night. And if you're looking for a bank you can rely on, you'll be reassured to discover that we've been around since 1695. Bank of Scotland, we're with you all the way.
Okay, so I'll play it again. I hope you got it a little bit. Let me take pen and paper so that I can write down some points. Just a minute. Okay, guys, so we'll play it again. And as I said, take some notes, some short notes, observe the scenes as well, so that we can actually respond to the analysis. So we'll start again.
When your Monday to Friday's been a wee bit hectic, you'll be happy to hear that Bank of Scotland have more than 80 branches open for business on Saturdays. And when it's been a long day, you'll be relieved to know you can call our UK-based call centres anytime, day or night. And if you're looking for a bank you can rely on, you'll be reassured to discover that we've been around since 1695. Bank of Scotland, we're with you all the way.
Okay, so yeah, let's go. So what are some of the things that you took notice of before I ask the questions anyway?
Okay, so I'd like to make an attempt.
Yeah, Michael.
I took notice of the fact that they combined multiple styles and multiple touch points and didn't just stick to one way of advertising. So for example, they started off combining emotion and logic by appealing to people who are very busy during the weekend. So knowing that banks tend to close around 3 or 4, but businesses around 5, you may not get the time to use the bank during the week. And because of that, they're providing you with the option to bank on a Saturday. So apart from appealing to you emotionally, i.e., we are here to understand the constraints that you have in the week. And because of that, we have started to work on Saturdays just to cater to you. And then also providing certain logical arguments like just so you know, we are in over 80 places, which means that we are likely near you.
Yeah.
And then also providing some security, because we have learned in previous lectures that one of the trickiest parts about marketing financial services is that you're dealing with money, and that comes with a bit of trust. In fact, a lot of trust. You have to make sure that the people who are using your services have 100% trust in you. And they ended on that note by saying that we have been around since 16, so and so and so and so. Just to show you that we've been around for close to 400 years, and we're still credible, we're still viable, we are, still here. So there's no need to fear that your money would be squandered.
Fantastic. I mean, a round of applause. Yeah, round of applause. Michael, that's great. Yeah. So who wants to add something to it before we come to what have you noticed?
Kobe, he said everything.
I know, I agree with you.
Yes, Michael has noticed everything for us. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, let's add more.
Great job, Mikey.
Let's add more to it. Let's add more. What else can you say?
Okay, Kobe, I think it was straight to the point and it was precise.
Excellent. No drama. They just, went. And if you listen to the voiceover, all right, there is nothing like humor. It's a very, to the point, what you call messaging. And obviously, apart from those of us who may not be familiar with the accent, very clear to the Scottish person if they're listening to it. All right. So that's fantastic point. And who else want to add something to it before I start asking my questions?
Can we say that the use of subtitles is a form of elaboration?
Excellent. Yeah. So the use of the subtitles is a form of elaboration, because the assumption is not everybody probably could have the ear, all right, to hear. Because there are people who may be, challenged, all right? And so the subtitle is a form of elaboration. Fantastic. Loretta, thank you.
Just to add on to that subtitle point, I was talking earlier about how when you are marketing online, you have to be aware of the channel that you use. Yeah. So subtitles have in the last few years become more of a requirement. It's actually now pretty much a requirement when you're advertising video online. Yeah. And one of the main reasons, apart from, like you were rightly saying, considering disabled people who can't hear, it's also meant to be for people who are in situations where they can't play the video out loud. So maybe you are in a public place and there's too much noise, or you're at work and you don't want your boss to realize that you're online. Wow. These are actually some of the reasons why subtitles are used, so that you don't have the excuse of not being able to access sound to ignore an advert. They're just making sure that they are presenting it in a way that is available to fully consume even without sound.
Excellent. Fantastic contribution. Thank you, guys. Okay, so let me take you back to my theory. As academic, we always like that, all right? So apart from the general observation, let's go back to the frameworks, all right? Let's take, for example, the consumer decision-making framework, which starts from need identification, et cetera, et cetera. So who can speak to that? Who can take the framework one by one? I know what Michael has said and what all of you have actually contributed. Certainly there may be a repetition, but take the framework one by one: need recognition, problem identification, information search, this and that. Put me through this examination. Who can attempt that?
Hello, Kobe.
Yeah, Dora.
Can you show the slide?
Okay.
Probably will help.
Okay, so I agree with you. So should I play it last time before I bring the slide? Once I'm on the screen now.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
I'll
yes.
play it last time, then I will load the slide, right? So let's go.
Okay.
When your Monday to Friday's been a wee bit hectic, you'll be happy to hear that Bank of Scotland have more than 80 branches open for business on Saturdays. And when it's been a long day, You'll be relieved to know you can call our UK-based call centres anytime, day or night. And if you're looking for a bank you can rely on, you'll be reassured to discover that we've been around since 1695. Bank of Scotland. We're with you all the way.
Excellent. Okay, so now I will show the slide. Okay, let's go. Slide. All right, so I move to the framework here. Okay, so let's begin. So when Michael was explaining about the need recognition or a problem identification, he mentioned that you have to identify your target market and find out what need do they have, all right? In this video, who do you think were the target market? Or how did the bank explain in the video their target market? And they use the word, if you think your Monday to Friday is a little bit hectic. So
Yes.
which
So
kind
the
of
working
demography?
class.
Yeah, working class, identified
Looking
by
at the work, identified by, you mean in the video? So
the
we can
video, yeah.
see the lady behind the desk and we can see people rushing to and fro, or is that what you're asking?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay.
That's one way it was indicated.
Yeah.
Another way was by the copy, which clearly stated if your Monday to Friday has to be a busy.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Exactly. And when you heard a little bit hectic, it came with segments of corporate people, contractors. You saw
industrial workers. Yes.
Industrial
yes,
workers.
we saw them.
You
Yeah.
saw farmers. Yeah.
Yes.
You saw farmers.
Yes.
Now, these are the demographies that were used to describe hectic people. You get it? So in demonstrating when your Monday to Friday is a little bit hectic, you could see the type of demographic characters that they were using. All right. And those who were in the suits or in the corporate jackets, I think you can see that obviously they are hectic people. You can see contractors, you could see farmers, and each segment or the scenes that came, you know, the camera was zooming in. You saw the scenes as these category of people definitely have a hectic day. All right. So this is how the video actually described the target market and how their day were, because you could see they're actively working in their respective fields. Are you with me? All right. So information search. How did they deploy the information search?
I think one way that they deployed information search was by communicating, one, the number of locations that they have, and then two, also making aware of the fact that even if you can't reach them on their physical location, they're available 24/7 via phone call.
Fantastic. You see? So they're saying that we have such and so branches, which means literally, as Michael said earlier on again, literally they are by you. All right. But if you can't reach the call center, 24/7 call center, and they added something. They added something to the 24/7 call center. What did they say? They say UK based.
They said that it's a UK based.
Exactly. UK based. Yes. Why did they say UK based? Because, you know, at some time, I don't know whether the situation has reversed now, but certainly in circa 2000 coming to latter part of 2000, majority of the British firms had their call centers outside. They were outsourcing.
India.
Yes,
India.
yes.
And
yes.
there were huge,
a lot of firms,
exactly. And there were huge issues. People were complaining that they can't hear the accent. There were fraud issues. People were complaining that their cards have been tampered with. There were so many things. Dolores,
yeah, even for companies like Visa and stuff, their call centers were sitting in places so foreign to the places where they were operating in. And then if someone's in Ghana and has an issue, and then it's sort of first support or second support has to go to this and the people cannot identify with what you're saying, you know. So it was a huge issue.
Exactly. So that brings you to the third level, pre-purchase evaluation. So they were saying that our call center is not in India. Of course, it will be very unethical for them to mention a country's name. But they say that you can rely on it because the reason is UK is very much law-abiding, compliance-based society. All right. So with the security systems, with the compliance systems, there is no way a company staff can be tampering with, you know, customers' issues because you know the fine, you know the penalties. All right. Even when I was working with T-Mobile, just going to a friend's account that, hey, Charlie, Dolores is my friend. Let me check her account, what, calls or maybe whether Dolores send you a message, Kobe, can you check whether I have credit on my phone? And you haven't been seen coming through the call loop, but Dolores' account had been accessed. They would trace the footprint, and then immediately they find my details on it that I have gone into the account. You are sacked. In fact, if you're not lucky, you would actually be prosecuted. And that's how strict the UK laws are. So that in itself is a differentiator. So companies who are actually having their call centers outside UK are actually there because of cost. They want to reduce cost. Because I remember those days, per call to UK lines, all right, if you're calling our T-Mobile lines, it cost the company £5. All right. Whereas when they make calls to India call center, it will cost them not even 1/10 of that amount. So companies were actually citing their call centers outside for cost purposes. But they're actually telling you that they are not actually shortchanging you, or they are not actually going to outside UK because of cost issue, because they care about your security. You get a point. So the idea that our call center is based in UK is a security message. And that is a pre-purchase evaluation message to say that as compared to those whose call centers are abroad, ours is in UK and it's by you. You will hear the accent. You will not get your card tampered with. You will not have any funny drama stuff. You get it? So that's how they deployed the pre-purchase evaluation. Okay, purchase.
Kobe, I wanted to add something there before we move on.
Yeah.
I wanted to add that while you were speaking, I realized that same message that they included does two other things aside from just the security.
Yeah.
It also improves customer service because, like you were saying, people are complaining about the accents and so on and so forth. And then another thing that it does too is that it increases trust, because when it comes to advertising, there are a lot of things that perhaps we don't like to speak about because of the implications.
Yeah.
But you have to be ready to speak about certain things. And one of those things is that in a lot of countries in the UK, the racism tends to be quite high. So you would actually find certain users of the bank who will call for assistance, realize it's from an Indian person, and you'll actually be upset because of that racial undertone. But unfortunately for us, companies know this. Just to divert a little bit, we've had people like Trump capitalizing on racism to even become the president of America. So even though it's something that perhaps would have ethical reasons to look at, companies will make sure that their customers are served first. And if the customer would rather hear somebody who sounds like him than hear somebody who sounds like somebody else, they will go ahead and do it as a way of increasing trust.
Exactly, fantastic. Even the idea of patriotism. You are giving jobs to UK people as opposed to giving jobs to other people, comes in the consideration here. So fantastic analysis. All these actually count. Yeah. So purchase and the consumption, perhaps we can actually put together. Was there anything deployed that you could feel that it was speaking to purchase consumption? Any message that was deployed in it?
maybe this is indirect. I don't know. Maybe I'm reaching, but I don't think I got anything very directly speaking to purchase, since this advert seems to be driving more towards awareness and not referrals or post-purchase or satisfaction, etc. But I think one way that we can see that they perhaps indirectly spoke to it was by saying that they've been around since 16, so and so and so.
Yeah.
To show that if we're still going after all of these years, then we must be doing something right for people to be patronizing us for this long.
Exactly.
So it's a subtle hint at the fact that the post-purchase after consumption leads to longevity.
Exactly. Exactly. Good point. So that's exactly what we're discussing. Yeah, Joe.
Yeah. What I can say here is at this stage, after having listened to the ad, the customer has now the opportunity to assess the facts and come to a logical conclusion. I mean, based on what he or she has heard, and then make a decision based on emotional connections or experiences, or succumb to the advert that he or she has heard.
Excellent.
So at this stage, that's what I can say.
Excellent. Good point. Yeah. So I mean, so basically, this is what we were analyzing or we're discussing about the theories and how you use the framework to guide you in developing your communication piece. All right. So there was one also, again from Bank of Scotland, that I wanted us to look at. Then we can end the class. Let me see if I can. That's also another good ad. Vets. It's about. Yes. Okay. Let's see. And the ad is very, very simple ad that you can actually relate to if you are within the bracket. Let me see this one.
And Kobe, please, does their slogan also come under pre-evaluation?
Yeah.
Evaluation.
Yeah.
I think they said we are with you all the way.
That's right. Yeah. So the slogan also emphasizes, that pre-evaluation, because if you look at the longevity, from 16 something and they are still here, that's why they're saying that we are with you all the way. So certainly, yes, that also, comes, to emphasize that point. All right. So, okay, there's another one here. Let's listen to this one as well, just like we did. Yeah. This one also has a funny accent, so be mindful.
I've lived in Glasgow for almost 25 years. I was always going to do something medicine related, so veterinary medicine seemed to be a good choice. You never really know what's going to come through the door. Often with the lesser known species, you put on a brave face, then scurry through the back to have a look at a medical book. As a vet, you never stop learning. It's one of these professions where a lot of things can't wait, by the very nature of the business. You work until things are done. It's a busy life. So if RBS wasn't open on Saturdays, I probably wouldn't get to the bank at all, and I'm happy I can see them then because there's more time to talk. I've been banking with RBS since I was 6 years old. They're a friendly bunch, and despite everything that's going on in the financial world, I do still trust them.
The Royal Bank of Scotland is here for you. That's why we've opened over 80 of our branches on a Saturday, from Sauchiehall Street to Stornoway. It's why we have more branches across Scotland than any other Scottish bank. The Royal Bank of Scotland, here for you.
Okay, so you see similar, but there are some differentials, all right? Should I play it again, or we should go on?
Kobe, this one, I mean, for most...
The accent is thick, Papa.
Yeah.
This one, they remind me of one time I went to UK, had some issues, Charlie. 5 minutes, CID were speaking, I couldn't hear anything. All the years, I beg this one.
The accent is very thick. All right.
No,
So
too much.
I'll play it again. Let's try as much as possible to see whether we can pick up some few, and then let's discuss it one time.
I've lived in Glasgow for almost 25 years. I was always going to do something medicine related, so veterinary medicine seemed to be a good choice. You never really know what's going to come through the door. Often with the lesser known species, you put on a brave face and scurry through the back to have a look at a medical book. As a vet, you never stop learning. It's one of these professions where a lot of things can't wait by the very nature of the business. You work until things are done. It's a busy life. So if RBS wasn't open on Saturdays, I probably wouldn't get to the bank at all. And I'm happy I can see them then because there's more time to talk. I've been banking with RBS since I was 6 years old. They're a friendly bunch, and despite everything that's going on in the financial world, I do still trust them.
The Royal Bank of Scotland is here for you. That's why we've opened over 80 of our branches on a Saturday in Sauchiehall Street, Lisdooney. It's why we have more branches across Scotland than any other Scottish bank. The Royal Bank of Scotland, here for you.
Okay. All right. So, anything that you got from here, different from the first one, or that is
Okay, let me try mine.
Yeah.
So the target market is clearly identified.
Mm-hmm.
He's a vet, and I heard a line like he works until everything is done or something.
Yeah.
Meaning he's also part of that busy working, and so normal banking hours are not for people like that, and that is why Saturday banking comes in as a good avenue for him. And so he's been banking with them for that long. So people with professions, busy professions like his, are the target markets for this. So that's what I identified as lead recognition.
Yeah.
Then for information search, what I noticed was the last part where they drum home point of they have I think 8 branches, and so they have more branches than, and this time around they actually name competitors they are better than.
Yeah.
So this is just giving you the options available and the fact that they are better than them, and so you can always stick with them, and just like the, you can trust the process.
Yeah. Excellent. Good point raised. Yeah. Anybody else? Differences that you got from here? Okay. So this particular ad is very relationship driven. If you actually listen to the tone and the kind of image, instead of the mass people that we saw in the first one, this was very much focused on this gentleman and the relationship manager. You realized it, right?
No.
And you realize that, you remember when we were looking at the advertising message, one says that, we treat you like you are the only investor in the world.
Yeah.
All right. This was that kind of focus. Like, we treat you as an individual. We treat you with a maximum focus on you. And you see that he said that he's been banking with them for 25 years. And since 6 years old, because the UK has they used to have something called ISA, which when you give birth, the government pays something to your account for the child, and then you keep, so the child is actually given an investment or savings right from the beginning, all right? So you have kids having bank account, and so he said that she's been banking with the RBS since age 6 years old up until now. And despite what is happening in the banking sector, he still trusts them. All right. So this ad was very much relationship loyalty driven, ad to actually tell the story that they are very much focused on their, individual customers, And then, of course, it adds the other bits that we saw in the first one to it by talking about how long they've been, the number of branches. And this one, he even says that from Sauchiehall Street to the they mentioned that to something near you, all right, to the shopping mall or something near you, all right, telling you that they are very, very close to your neighborhood, to your communities, all right. So clearly, you know, it sort of puts the target in the customer in perspective, the need recognition of the problem identification in perspective, the evaluation of alternatives, etc., in perspective. So this is the kind of conversation we're having now. You know, to advertise or to actually create a communication, you want to look at the frameworks and see how you can deploy, you know, the frameworks in certain message content that could actually, you know, or the customer can actually relate to it. I think you guys have done fantastically well on that analysis. Thank you so much for today. If you have any questions, if you have any contribution, if you don't, then we can actually close it for the day. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, Kobe, I have to run, so I'll exit ASAP.
Okay. Okay, that's all right. So we are actually exiting. Any other views? All right. All right. Thank you, guys.
The lecture notes there. Have you sent it?
Yeah, I've sent it to. Okay, Joe, you have an issue. You have a question.
Bridget.
Yeah.
Bridget, I sent it this afternoon.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Joe, you have an issue, a question or a contribution?
Yeah, a question, Kobe,
Yeah.
quick one.
Yeah.
I wanted to know if someone, let's say, if you're selling a financial product and you have a tagline.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. You try to maybe remodel the product again, or you bring it to the market for the second time. Can you still go back to your previous tagline?
Yes, if the tagline is one that a lot of people remember. Remember when you are doing things like rebranding or you know, introducing something new, you want to consider the entirety of the product, i.e., the packaging, the branding, etc. If the tagline is associated with the reasons why you're doing this, for example, the product has experienced some negativities, and so you want to rebrand it. Now, if you don't take care, you use the old tagline, it means that nothing has changed, you know, so it can associate with that. But if the change is not as a result of some bad connotations, all right, or some bad images, but you just want to bring some freshness into the system, all right? Because once they say familiarity breeds contempt, all right? So the product has been existing for so long, color the same, everything the same, it's experiencing some, you know, some kind of familiarity breeds contempt kind of issue. You can change the colors, change the, you know, color code, etc., but then keep the same tagline. Of course, you can actually, you know, add the word new to it, you know, for people to actually refreshing or maybe a refreshed, you know, version for people to notice the difference. Sometimes the difference may not be easily noticeable, all right, and then still keep the tagline. So it depends on what are the reasons why the change happened, all right. If it's because of some negativities, tagline can actually lead to remembering people that negativities. But if it's not because of that, you can still keep it.
Okay, so just to add this one,
yeah.
Let's say a car company that it's a local age, let's say Honda Accord.
Yeah.
They decide to bring Honda 2016 model. Let's say 2016. Got a model and said they made a big advert billboard and said that end of discussion. Now, so in 2020, when you bring the latest version, you still can you easily go back and say end of discussion again?
Yeah, well, that one is an extension of the brand. Obviously, the first one was end of discussion. Perhaps this one, is an emerging futuristic concept, all right? You cannot use end of discussion because you have ended that at the time. So perhaps you want to look at something futuristic and say, this is the new era, all right? So the end of discussion actually curtails that previous era, and then a new era or futuristic ambitions or whatever actually starts with a new, a new version. Are you with me? So
yes.
depending on the circumstances that you used it, because you couldn't end the era there or end the discussion there, and then come to with another end of discussion, it will confuse customers.
So does it mean that we must be very careful in choosing taglines for financial products?
That's
so
right.
That at the point you don't hit a snag anymore.
That's correct. I remember when two things I recognized. I remember MTN used to use everywhere you go, right?
Yeah.
And then they changed it to MTN. What's the new tagline? They started with another one. I've forgotten the next. So last time I was asking in Sako that I thought
welcome to a new world.
Yeah, welcome to a new world. Yes, welcome to a new world. And I was telling in Sako that I thought that everywhere you go was very compelling because it puts the value proposition out there clearly that you will get signal wherever you go. MTN will work, all right? Which immediately communicates the value proposition. And then they went to welcome to the new world. And then he was saying that because of changing regulation, because now all the networks were actually sharing pylons, right? So network wasn't an issue for any of the telco operators. So it means that it wasn't anymore a differentiator, right? And so they had to actually propose welcome to a new world to embrace data and new exciting things. And I thought it made sense, all right? So but you realize that they still use the two. He was saying that they still keep the two. They haven't actually ended the everywhere you go completely, but they still hang around that from time to time. But then of course the new welcome to the new world was the new tagline. Now again, Joy FM, I think the Joy Brand Multimedia, when they brought their satellite or their what do you call it, that case, that box, the box. The Digibox. I remember when they were promoting it, they called it More TV for less or so. I don't know who heard it. More what?
Less for more.
For free.
Yeah, More TV for free. All right, which I thought was really catchy. Now, eventually, they changed it to just thrills or something. All right, just thrills or some yeah. And I thought that just thrills, it's even a mouthful. And I didn't think that it was. But apparently they thought that because they were charging, but you can still say More TV for free because perhaps not everything that is chargeable. There may be other channels that you can still get free, isn't it? So sometimes you want to look at the proposition and the change and see whether the change would actually, because I don't think that the More Thrills actually does it. And it was even confusing. For me, sometimes you have to even pay attention before you can remember it. But More TV for free was fantastic, So if it wasn't capturing, the now or the moment, then it means you made a mistake in the first place. Because when you are setting some of these, it has to be visionary. It has to have a long-term approach. I remember City FM. I had the same debate with this guy, Benavle, one time when I went there. And their mission statement was about radio. All right. It was clearly, we want to be something radio. And I asked him, are you guys saying that you will not move into any other platforms, internet, web? But eventually they've gone into TV. I don't know what that mission statement would be. Obviously, it won't be relevant, all right? So it won't be relevant because you said that radio. TV is not radio, obviously web is not radio. So when you are setting some of these things up, you have to be visionary. You have to actually know the direction. Of course, at some point you may change, but know that your vision statement, your taglines, when they change, they shouldn't differ so much. That's why a lot of thoughts and a lot of direction must go in when you are creating some of these, taglines. Yeah.
Okay, Kobe, last one.
Yeah, sure.
Let me just tie this two. Let's say I want your perception about this.
Yeah.
Let's say the vice president goes up north,
yeah,
and he speaks to, specifically his people, where he comes from, for whether working visit or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, he speaks English instead of the local dialect, even though he can equally speak the local dialect.
Yeah.
Now, I want to find out whether is he speaking or talking at for the nation, I mean, for all of us to hear, or just to his people.
Okay.
Because I don't get it here. You go speak to your people, your folks. You know, in their cognitive, ability is low. Then you decide to speak English. Meanwhile, they don't really get you. I want to add this second one so that you can give one exact answer. Now, let's say my head of SME goes to Choco. For maybe want to sell some of our products to the people. Now he speaks fluent English, and these people are predominantly Ghanaians who don't really, most of them don't really even understand the English. Is it, wouldn't it be prudent to take someone along? Somebody should be in the team who is able to speak the people's dialect, so that not necessarily because you are the head, you want to or take the center stage and everybody to see you, or you are going there to speak so that all of us in the country can hear you. Are you targeting the people, or you want all of us to hear you? Meanwhile, where you are, the people don't even understand what you are saying.
Excellent. Now, good point and good observations. Two things, in communication, and I teach I train companies on report writing and communication. So usually when I go and meet them, some of these things come up. Now, in communication, we say that your audiences are multiple. So you could have first level audience, second level audience, even sometimes third level audience. The idea is that the first level audience is your immediate target. Now, someone who is not part of the immediate target could also be exposed to your conversation. And in this mediatized, we call it mediated, society, or mediatized society, that we cannot address, our target market without the media, all right? So you end up saying that, yes, I'm addressing this group of people, but certainly there will be a media intervention, all right? So for vice president, you know that media is going to be there and then beam it to the whole country. So he has first, level audience, and he has second level audience, all right? Now, the challenge is that what is the core audience need here? And the core audience is your people that you are speaking to. Now, in politics or in every endeavor, there's what we call brand association or brand personality and all these concepts, all right? Now, there's supposed to be a congruence between your target audience and the product. In this case, the vice president or the brand, all right? Now, that congruence must be achieved by a number of things, including language, all right? You want to actually let them feel part of you and you being part of them, all right? So the brand is supposed to demonstrate a personality that is relatable or that the audience could relate. I hope I'm clear by now, right? Now, in this case, if he speaks English, he actually risks alienating the target, that is the first level target, in the conversation, because in the first place, there's a barrier, all right? Number one barrier is that you are one of us, you are speaking English as if you are not one of us. So that's psychologically, you have alienated them. And second barrier is that some may not have the ability to comprehend. And even if they can follow, because of the first barrier, the idea that you have actually demonstrated as though you are not part of us would let them filter the message, that is switch off. Are you with me? So technically speaking, what you want to do, that if you want to please the first level audience and the second level audience, then you want some kind of interpretation, either by someone or by yourself, all right? So that's why sometimes you hear people speak the local language and then they speak the English version, all right? And, when you look at educational training, I mean, they say that if you go in class and then you in the course of your teaching, you use a local language expression, know that not all students may understand it. So immediately you finish using that expression and people are laughing. you have to speak the English version and to say that, oh, what I said is this, or was that, I meant to say this, all right? So that whoever doesn't actually understand the local version would understand the English version. Vice versa, if you do not want to alienate your people, you want to speak your language, all right? So that you bring them on board, you create that congruence between you and them. And then because of the cameras, you can actually speak the English version each time, all right? There's another way of doing it. Address your people in the language, and when you're done, speak to the cameras and then sum what you said to your people in the English language for the, the general Ghanaian public, all right? Or you can have an interpreter that would actually interpret what you said in your language in the English version. Three or other ways that you can achieve that. Am I clear on this one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, with regards to going to Choco as a CEO, again, what we call brand architecture, and what we call brand architecture means that you have to actually rearrange your brand in a way that you know which one leads you. Sometimes you do not necessarily have to be the leader of the delegation for community entry just because you are a CEO. No, it doesn't work that way. All right. I remember in 2000, whenever President Kufuor went into Volta region, it was actually sometimes his wife who spoke, because the wife can speak fluent ever, or it was Major General, what's his name, the Everman who is dead, Kwashiga.
Kwashiga.
Yeah, who spoke, all right, because they can, exactly, they can articulate, they can relate to the people very easily. Whereas Kufuor was there. So Kufuor's presence is there, they can see him, but he will allow these people, the wife or Kwashiga, to speak, all right, because the community can find affinity in these people. You know, there's nothing powerful than speaking someone's own language. People cherish it. So if you can speak, you speak. If you cannot, you take a lawyer to actually speak on your behalf. You go into a community like Choco, and some of these communities, they feel so proud about their characteristics, regardless of who they are and what you think they are. They are very much proud. I mean, my own village, near Takrady, if you go there, it's a very typical place like Choco. Those of you who know Takrady, all right? But they are so proud about themselves. And so when you go and immediately you start speaking from there, I say, or to them, they are so excited, maybe in your tie and things, and you start using the language. All right. So, because when you go to my village, for example, you don't call Spain, you have to call it Panya, right? So, so when you immediately you say Spain, everybody knows that you're not from there, right? There are certain slang that we use too. So immediately you start speaking those languages, they look at your character, I mean, the things that you're wearing and the fact that you can speak the local slang. They feel so passionate about you, you know, as if they are even your bodyguards. They will be by you and they will protect, that kind of thing. So you don't go into such communities and then go and rattle English, all right? Who can actually speak the language better would be good for community entry. And when we say community entry, the way the community will welcome you and accept your brand is very, very crucial. And that's what you want to look at. Right.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Does that address your issues?
Yes, please.
Excellent. All right. All right. Thank you, guys. I hope you have enjoyed yet another lecture.
It was awesome.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. All right.
Yes,
so
thank you too.
we'll meet again. When is it?
I think
Bridget, when?
It will have to be.
I have to check again.
Okay.
It will have to be Saturday 9 o'clock.
Okay.
Because obviously the Tuesday 4 is out. So.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So
are we having the Tuesday 4? No.
Oh.
Okay. You let's check how it goes, but I'm sure it will be Saturday.
Okay. All right.
All right. Take care, guys. Enjoy your. Yes. Yeah. Go ahead.
So the last video sent was for the 5th session, right?
Yeah, the video. Yeah.
So it's just this one outstanding.
Yeah, this is outstanding. I'll send it.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Enjoy your evening. Yeah. Yeah.
You too.
Thank
You too.
All right. Bye.
Bye.